Happy Monday. I hope everybody's good. Hello, hello. Happy Monday. Any tips on how to have male partners to be more open with emotions, thoughts, and vulnerabilities? Um, thanks, Amy. Um, you know, I think the single most important way to get people to share is to create a safe space. And a safe space, I think, is number one, non-judgmental. Um, Number two, listening, like letting people finish their whole thing, not fixing. Like I will tell people, right? I'll plant seeds, I'll lay out a roadmap, but not until I've fully empathized with them. How do you know if you're stuck in a trauma bond or just someone who cares too much? There might not be much of a difference, right? I think the question is, why do I care so much? And trauma bonds, I'm trying to think if there's an exception to this. Oh, and I had a revelation. Remind me to talk about my revelation. I can do a TikTok on this too. See, I've already forgotten why I got up to have the pet, why I got what I was supposed to write down when I got up to, you guys, I'm terrible. Um, I'm trying to think about whether or not a trauma bond technically only exists with the person that was like responsible for the trauma, or and I don't think that that's accurate. I think that a trauma bond is more situational, like my reactive response is about the event or the triggering event. um maybe I can give you a good example of that, but i'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure that caring too much is a consequence, can be a consequence of a trauma experience, right? And I would say, what do you, I have so many questions. What do you mean about caring too much? Is that an attachment trauma? Is it a service trauma? Like I want to be in service. Are you caring too much about um okay, you aren't together anymore, but you have too much empathy for him as a person. Are you an empath? Is it empathy not just for him, but for lots of other people? Is this kind of a trend in your life? And listen, I'm kind of asking rhetorical questions here to get you to think. Um, and I'll share this with you. So my son Frank and I were talking, and many of you know that my first husband was electrocuted trying to get a kite off of a power line. And as he and his friend were walking over to the field where they were, you know, engaged in this big operation, our the friend's wife said, "Don't you listen or don't you read your power bill insert. You're not supposed to mess with power lines." And I'll never forget, Rocky turned around and said, "We'll be fine." He was invincible, right? He was 23 years old. He was just invincible. And what I realized, and I think that I would qualify this as a trauma bond, for the rest of my life, whenever someone said, in particular my children, "Don't worry, mom, I'll be fine," I had a triggered reaction that's tethered, if you will, to that moment. I never trusted them. I never trusted in 40 years almost. It's been 35 years. I've never trusted somebody who said, "Don't worry, I'll be fine." I think that's a good example of what a trauma bond can be. Um, so think about, right, these things that pop up. Think about, why do I care so much? What is it about caring so much that protects me? How do you know if you're an empath? An empath feels the pain of a lot of people. Like, you can feel the energy when you walk into a room. You can sense people's moods, the high or the low. Harlan used to say to me, and I probably rolled my eyes at him a few times, but he'd say, "There's a rift in the collective consciousness." And I would say, "You've watched too much Star Wars. There's a rift in the Force," kind of thing. Not, yeah, Star Wars. But he was very much an empath. He could feel negative energy. And a lot of empaths have a tendency to say things like, "I just want everybody to be happy," or "I don't want them to feel bad," or "I know it's not my responsibility, but I like to do what I can," that kind of thing. How do you set boundaries as an empath? I'll tell you what I do, especially like in session. I imagine, and if you've been with me for any length of time, you've heard me talk about imagery. And when I'm in session, I imagine that there's like an a black hole between the client and me, and that all of their stuff falls into the black hole before it reaches me. Now, every once in a while, that doesn't work, and I realize that I'm starting to take on some of that stuff, in which case I um, imagine a bubble, or I wrap myself up in light, or imagine that I've encased myself in a bubble. When you're an empath, you must participate in conscious protection of your energy, or people will suck you dry. And it's not that they necessarily intend to, it's that empaths have a tendency to just kind of leave themselves open. Um, and so, any, for lack of a better word, any leech or any empty person that comes to you, and who talks about this really cool in a cool way, is James Redfield in the Celestine Prophecy. And he doesn't use the empath vocabulary, but he talks a lot about watching this transfer of energy that takes place. So he has, if I remember correctly, it's been 20 years since I read the book, but I remember thinking that he has the ability to see auras, and that he can actually see auras draining from one person and filling another person when they're standing close together. And I think that's fascinating. Um, so it really is about taking an active role in protecting your energy, and it has to be conscious. Because if we are unconscious, we just let people just suck us dry. And that can, I mean, the conscious part of it can be kind of challenging. So it's either you either amp up in a really big way your self-care, or so that you're constantly getting, oh, that's a filling bucket. See, this is what happens. I I have these ideas. I'm like, oh, I'll think about that. And then I'm just chatting away and I'm like, oh yeah, that's an idea. Um, self-compassion. Let me write that down before I forget. Um, so I hope that helps and gives you something to think about. Is there a cure for being an empath? No, no, an empath. I, okay, let's see. Let me backtrack on that a little bit. An empath is really just a big, open-hearted person. It's not a it's not a disease or a problem. Being an empath is not a problem. Having an absence of boundaries is what the problem is. And so when you're an empath, you just have to put conscious energy into um, creating boundaries. And yeah, like Caitlin says, it's the blessed curse. Can an angry person get you angry? You know, I think the short answer is the very short answer is not really, but it can feel a lot like that. And if you're not, again, if you're not conscientiously paying attention to your emotions, I think what can happen is that angry person may, let's say they stand next to you and they're sucking your energy. And then now you're noticing that all of a sudden you don't have a ton of energy, and you can get angry at yourself for allowing something to have happened. I mean, that's a very short way of trying to explain to you that our emotions are not other people's faults. And I need to talk about that again too. Um, you know, if, and I know those of you who are here all the time probably get so tired of hearing me say this. Um, if I could teach everybody one thing, this would be in my list of top 5 things to really consider. And that is that we are each responsible for our emotion. Our emotion comes from inside of us. Now, yes, the things that people do trigger emotions that sit inside of us, but they're our emotions. So if somebody does something cruel or disrespectful or all of those kinds of things, I might get angry, but they didn't make me angry. And I have such an issue. I have a whole podcast dedicated to this particular topic. But other people do not force me to feel things. My feelings sit and reside inside of me, and they come out based on the meaning that I attach to the events and the circumstances that sit outside in the world, right? Most of the time, all of the emotion that I have about something is sitting there because of something else that happened in my past, right? If I don't like pit bulls, if I get scared of a pit bull, it's because somewhere back there, I've either heard that pit bulls are dangerous or I've had a negative experience with pit bulls in the past. This one dog that's lying on the carpet in front of me, there's not really a dog here, but if there's a pit bull on the carpet in front of me, just minding his own damn business, that pit bull hasn't done a damn thing to me. And so any emotion that I have about this pit bull is going to be based on something from the past that's sitting here, and this pit bull's existence is triggering something that already sits inside of me. And that concept is so powerful that when you really get it and understand it, you stop blaming other people for how you feel, and you start accepting responsibility. And holy crap, what kind of dynamic change would exist in the world if we all just frickin' took personal responsibility for our own damn feelings? I mean, it would just, oh, it would be mind-boggling, I think. Specific ways to practice self-care. I will do that, Caitlin, but I will tell you that my book, and this isn't an intentional plug, but my book has 365 ways to feel happier, healthier, and more productive, which is all healthcare. So, something as innocuous as sitting down and doing a puzzle, cleaning your underwear drawer, organizing your spices, those are all self-care activities, because when I open my underwear drawer, if it's chaotic, it's always chaotic, but when everything looks folded, it's like, oh. Or if it's really easy all of a sudden to find the cinnamon because my spice cabinet looks organized, it's like a, oh. And each little time that we do a, ah, it sends a little shot of dopamine into our brain and we feel better. And that's self-care. So I can do that. And I did actually think at one point that I have 365 ideas right there for content, because um, I spent a year writing that book. Um, but I feel like I did that. I've been there, done that. But yeah, I could do that. But it is my book. Can you also discuss dealing with feelings of jealousy as an adult? Actually, that's a really great topic. I don't see that addressed very much. And I'm going to say that jealousy is an emotion that's triggered by fear. So think about that for a minute. Jealousy is an emotion that's triggered by fear. So ask yourself, what am I afraid of? And if I'm jealous that my friend makes more money than I do, um, I'm afraid that I'm never going to be successful. If I'm jealous about the girl that my husband's talking to, I'm afraid that he's going to like her more than me. If I'm jealous that somebody else has a nicer body than I do, or a bigger house than I do, that really is about self-esteem and the fear that I don't measure up to other people. So jealousy is an emotion that is rooted in fear. You have to figure out, what am I afraid of? There's probably some self-esteem in there, in which case the goal would be to boost esteem. By the way, also, while I have you guys on here, and I'll probably make a TikTok about this, but I'm bringing back the Elevate class. The Elevate class is a self-awareness, happiness coaching class that I teach twice a year. I didn't do it in I didn't do a spring 2021 or a winter. I guess I did a winter 2020. Anyway, I didn't do the fall this year, or spring this year. So I guess it's 2021 that I just totally did not do because I just got super busy. But I'm bringing it back in 2022. If you go to my website, um, there's a link in the header. It says the Elevate class. I'm pretty sure if you just hang out on the website or scroll down a little bit, you'll get a pop-up. that will redirect you to a whole nother site where you can register. If if you want the coaching elements of the Elevate class, it's a little on the pricey side, but it is a 10-week intensive journey. You have to set aside 1 to 2 hours a day. It's a pretty intense journey to really evaluate all of the parts of yourself that generate happiness. And the idea is to really define happiness and get a good understanding of what is important to you. And we talk every week. This time I'm going to bring in a group element, so we'll probably have Zoom sessions once a week as well. And I'm really excited to be bringing that back because I have so many people asking for coaching. I have such a limited amount of time, and the Elevate class is really the coaching and the self-discovery and the self-awareness is those are the things that I think are the cornerstone of personal growth, and I really love just teaching and working with them. So go to my website, look for the Elevate class in the header, and if you have any questions, feel free to message me or reach out. You're jealous of people who have a best friend because you want one. Um, yeah, I think, Kelly, the question is what prevents me from having a best friend? What is it? Do I hold back? Do I um, do I engage? Do I offer what people need? Do I put myself out there? And I also think that I would maybe have you challenge whether or not it's jealousy. Um, so those are just the things that come to my mind that you can think about. You have a hard time finding people who don't bore you, then you're not looking for people in the right places, right? You're not making connections to people that are in like-minded spaces. Like you probably need people who are maybe deeper on an intellectual scale, or people who are more introspective, or people who have just a strong confidence and can get into a lot of things, in which case I'm going to send you right to meetup.com. Find a group of people who do things that you like to do and start there. I mean, I think as we get older, best our friendships become much more discerning. We have less time for bullshit. We're not as patient with superficial superficial relationships. And so I think it's very, very common as we get older not to put the kind of time and energy into developing friendships the way that we did when we were younger. And so we have to be a little bit more mm, discerning, I suppose. Um, Thank you, Lois. I would really suggest that you go to Meetup and find a group of people that's either a book club or gameplay or hikers or walkers or bicyclists or whatever, and start with a core group of people that you share something really meaningful in common. Madison, you're jealous that your dad puts all his time and energy into your nieces versus your own kids. Distance is a factor. That is so hard. And to be honest, isn't that still based in fear, right? I'm afraid that they'll get what I want my children to have, um, which is legit. And when I say it's legit, we all have an idea of what those relationships look like, what we want them to be. And when they're not, it's really disappointing. And I think that's true across the board for um, for so many things. So yeah, jealous is probably a good word. And I think there's an acceptance that I have this fear, I have this feeling. Um, I don't like the idea that the relationship I was hoping you would have with my kids isn't going to manifest. I don't like that. And by the way, I would speak it, and this is true to all of you. When we're jealous, we often don't want to feel that, so we push it aside. We don't tend to acknowledge it, but I would say journal about it, talk to a friend about it, tell your therapist about it. Get that feeling up on the table and out in the open. The more you talk about those negative feelings, the less power they have. I promise you. The more you talk about them, the more you open them up and dissect them, the less power they have. That's why talk therapy is so powerful. Um, yeah, it it's hard to feel that stuff. It really is. I totally relate to that. Let's see, we talk jealousy, but is there a term for wanting someone to have what you have been wanting? For not wanting someone to have it? I think I understand what you mean, Kayla. Um, one of the things that I would say is maybe potentially envy for wanting someone to have what you have. Okay. Paige, good job. Is there a term for wanting someone to have what you have versus wanting what they have? So, wanting what they have would be envy. And if you want them to have what you have, I'm going to put it out there to everybody else. Oh, care. I'm so sorry. Um, yeah, they did. They worked really hard. Um, Kayla, can anybody help her with that? Like, if you really want something, if you want your friend to experience something, longing, desire, I have this really deep desire for you to feel the joy that I feel, or um, gosh, that's the only thing that she said she would guide me, but hold on. Okay, Paige, now we're talking about a therapist. All right, well, see what I do? I have ADD so bad. So, Kayla, I can't think of a word that specifically means that, but I'll let that sit in my brain a little bit. Paige, she said she'd guide you, but I don't know what to start with. Do we go back to childhood, start with the present, or just show up? Um, take a deep breath, go in. Everybody's a little different. I usually say, what brings you in? And then she'll start asking you questions, and hopefully, and you go from there. Just answer her questions. But maybe be prepared for the reason I felt it was necessary to come is blank, blank, blank. You got childhood trauma, domestic violence, murders, mom with bipolar. Oh my gosh. So, Paige, pick the thing that made you decide to go to therapy and kind of lead with that. And you can even say, there's just so much, and I don't know what's important for you to know. And I would appreciate it if you would kind of lead me or ask the questions, and I'll just share from there. And maybe ask your therapist. Maybe have a little checkbook, check a little list of things that you want to make sure that she knows. And if you run out of time, there's time, so don't panic if the hour runs out. But if there's something that she doesn't necessarily address, you can always say, oh, and by the way, I meant to share that, blah, blah, blah. Care, tell you how to calm down. Sorry, like, wow. Care, take a deep breath. Come on, take a deep breath. And give yourself a hug right now. Just put your arm around yourself and maybe even kind of pat your arm. And it's going to be okay. You're okay. Today, you're okay. Right this minute. Just right this second. You're here. You're listening to me. And you're okay. And you have all these emotions. You can just imagine that they're moving through you. They don't have to be stuck. They can just move through you. Okay? I probably should make a point to say I've never been diagnosed with ADD, but there's a good chance that I probably had it, some kind of attention deficit, intermingled with my anxiety. So I probably shouldn't have thrown it out there quite so fast. Kelly, I only wanted the same attention and communication paid to me that my spouse gave to his AA females. Yeah. Are you still married, Kelly, to that person? um, I can't, 40 years, yes. Hmm. I'm sure that that's hard because the people in AA, my understanding, I've never been to an AA meeting, but I've worked with lots of clients who have worked the program, and my understanding is that there's such a united camaraderie in the experience of recovery that there's and I just realized that my ear. There's um an emotional intimacy that develops as a result of those shared experiences. And I can imagine as a spouse that if you're not in recovery, that can be incredibly hard. And I think it's very fair to say that they got a part of, if I understand you correctly, that they got a part of you that I didn't get. And I was always super envious because it felt like maybe that there was something missing.
Um, and again, putting that out on the table, being open to talking about it, keeping it a part of the conversation, as long as he doesn't get defensive and you're not attacking when you say that. It's really just about expressing emotion. Hopefully it'll create some emotional intimacy that you guys can build upon. Um, okay, it's um, yeah, and I think that that's probably true. It's and the only I always go back to this. You know, I've struggled with weight my entire life. And when a thin person who can eat a whole chocolate cake without a blink of an eye tells me that I should just move more, I want to frickin' slap him across the face, you know? And I like, I can only imagine that it's something very similar. But I still want to say that if you talk about it and you put those emotions on the table, that can open some emotional intimacy opportunities in and of itself. What is the best way to deal with seasonal depression? Light. Light. Bright daylight light bulbs. As much light as you can have. You can invest in a sun lamp. If you're, I mean, it really is about light in for a lot of people. And busyness, like getting outdoors anyway. I tell people, sit in your car, put your face to the sun, you know, lean out, kind of put your face to the sun so that you're kind of outside letting that soak up. Um, you know, back in the day they would say go in a lay in a tanning bed, but we know that's not necessarily healthy for you now. So, but you can get lights. I mean, even a couple of ring lights, or this making sure that you get daylight light bulbs and keep them on in a room at like 100%. I'm thinking I have, you can tell I have a ring light, I've got a yellow light above, I've got the table lamp here, all in an effort to light my face, but it's pretty darn light in here. It doesn't feel like it's 10 o'clock at night until I look out the window and see that it's pitch black. Thank you for being here. I really do love you guys.